We're live on a Tuesday morning with Mr. Matthew Davidow. You are someone who I really like to talk to, but I also really don't like to talk to. And there's two reasons. I like to talk to you because I always learn something and I become smarter. I don't like to talk to you because I end up feeling really dumb at a number of times within the conversation when you're sharing your expertise. So I appreciate you taking time out of your Tuesday to jump on the call.
Well, that's too nice, Adam. I like being on with you every time. I haven't done one of these in a long time, and yours is the only call I answered. So
it's my first interview with somebody else as well in about a year and a half too. So there's rust both ways. We'll work through it as we go. Want to start off with the important question. You're in Japan. Give me the breakdown. It's high on my list. We'll give a quick breakdown. We'll get into the NFL and the best team. But I want to know, is it worth to travel over there? The wife is pushing me to go.
Oh, it was so much fun. We took our kids. It was me, my wife, and we have a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old. And I mean, we had the food is so good. Everything is completely spotless, which my wife particularly just loves. And it's always one of my bucket list places. And we were just spur of the moment. We're like, you know what? Let's take the kids to Japan. And I'm so completely blessed, and that's a possible thing in my life. There's a nonstop from I live in Denver. There's nonstop, so easy. So the food, oh my god, the food, and we're with the kids. You guys are gonna get from a culinary experience. You'll be able to do it all and do things that we weren't really able to do, obviously.
Where does the food rank versus other places that you've traveled? Because I've heard nothing but amazing things.
Yeah, so from a depth of food perspective, I think it was the best. I have a weird number one food choice though from worldwide places.
What is it?
Moscow.
Wow.
I had the best. I had the best food in Moscow anywhere I've been. But Moscow's it has the best of the best and the worst of the worst. And I mean, it's all high end. The food was so clean there. I never saw seed oil in Moscow for sure. That was years and years ago, before that was even a thing. Yeah.
Okay. Bold call with Moscow top food. I didn't see that coming. The meat and everything in Japan and the culture just looks like it's incredible. So I'm glad to have your endorsement.
Cook it yourself, and definitely do a traditional Ryorkan, like one of the hot spring type small towns. Something high end. They'll serve the food in the room. It's really cool experience.
All right. I'm in. Now with your endorsement, it's got to happen after football season. Of course, with football season, we're at the halfway point. And what I really want to have you on here as we go through this, just looking back at the last 8 weeks that happened as we're at the halfway mark and kind of seeing what we think going forward. It's been a very kind of quirky year with a lot of things. So I think from your perspective, with your ratings, your history in odds making, your history in modeling, we can really kind of get a grasp on some of these teams. I want to start you off with a softball. Through 8 weeks, who's number one on your side? Best team in the NFL?
Eagles.
Really? Interesting. Had they been there all year? Or where did they start out?
I think they were there all year. I'm high on the 49ers as well, but when you get a first down every single third and one or fourth and one, I mean that's like a extra big bonus.
Interesting. Nick Sirianni, he's like, we're playing. It's every series. It's 1st and 9. No other team in the league has that. So you buy into that?
Yeah, I haven't seen it miss yet. Kelsey's unbelievable.
So the interesting thing about the Eagles is it seems to be a divide. There's one half saying that they've looked kind of clunky. They haven't looked as good as they were a year ago. They haven't quite got things right. And then there's the other side that says, well, look at where they are win-loss wise, despite not having that top-tier play, and they're sorting them out through the two coordinators. As you look down the rest of the season, do you envision them staying in that top spot?
I mean, I think so. I think they've had pretty good play. They fought through a lot of injuries in the secondary. Now they traded for Beard. I'm really not sure if he's any good anymore, but he's got to be an upgrade over what they had, particularly from a communication standpoint. I mean, now you're able to play, Slay, other top corner, and Beard together, and these guys have been playing NFL football for 10 plus years, and now you put that to they have 6 top tier interior defensive linemen too, best offensive line, maybe the best wide receiver this year.
Yep.
If the quarterback would stop running backwards every time his first read is in there, they'd be unstoppable.
Where do you look at how they handle second half situations? They, to me, have the ability to run out games with their ground game and kill the clock, unlike any others. Is that something that you maybe value more as the season progresses, or does that factor in at all?
I think it all works together. I think their ability to run out the clock is the same as their ability to score in the first quarter, second quarter. I mean, again, between the offensive line, another huge upgrade that went way under the radar this year that they had is Swift over Miles Sanders. I mean, Miles Sanders is a terrible running back. I mean, he's so bad that Carolina just paid him $25 million and now has benched him for Chuba Hubbard. I mean, you just touch him and he goes down. Now they have a real back together with everything else.
Okay, so you said Eagles number one, and then you hinted San Francisco is right up there. What about in the AFC side? How are you dividing between Chiefs, Bills, Dolphins, and everything else going on in the AFC? Who do you have top there?
I was a little down on the Chiefs to start the year, and I mean, I'm still their defense is obviously been so good, and if it keeps playing at this level, then I don't think anyone's going to beat them in the AFC. But will it keep playing at this level? I'm not sure. Jacksonville, how about that young defense? I mean, another team I was not sure about that team, particularly on defense. Their defense has been incredible as well.
So you would have Chiefs number one, or do you have Dolphins ahead of them?
I don't even know why I mentioned those teams, because I think the Bengals and the Ravens might be actually. There's so many teams that are so close. I think the Bengals could be the best team, though.
How are you handling the first 6 weeks of the season versus what we saw last week for Cincinnati post-bye? Are you kind of disregarding the first 6 weeks because of the injury, or what's going on there rating-wise?
I mean, he had a bad injury, and I think almost any quarterback would have sat through it to get better. I mean, I guess he just got as big. I don't know. I can't say enough good things about Joe Burrow. I mean, he played through that injury. It was right for the team. He was still better than anybody else they would have put in. There would have been, but he wasn't good. And I guess it healed despite him playing. And I mean, did you see the play when he brushed off Armstead, threw off, and then tossed a dive to a coming? Even Mahomes is not making that play these days.
Well, there's no longer any doubt about Burrow. I think it was kind of that built-in excuse for the first month and a half. Now it's like, okay, that's gone. And I think the tough thing to decipher between is the expectations preseason were as high as they get. And they fell so even last week against San Francisco, they were big dogs on the road, even though everyone assumed that he was healthy coming out of the bye. And it's now we're looking at them of laying a field goal against Buffalo and taking money. Do you agree with that price against the Bills rating wise?
I guess, yeah. I mean, the Bills are so thin on defense right now. I mean, obviously the Bills have a huge upside. You know, Allen's Allen, but they're so thin on defense. They have so many injuries, and I don't know exactly what I mean. The Giants moved the ball on them, for Christ's sakes.
Okay, tell me about the Ravens. You slipped that in there. What are your thoughts on them so far?
Lamar was my MVP choice before the season. I think that,
okay.
Not that there was anything wrong with the previous scheme, but I think they had a big. I think getting Monken as offensive coordinator was a big boost for them, and particularly as they're able to keep playing in that system. I mean, every pass play, there's a guy wide open. I mean, they should have put up so many more points earlier this season between drops and weather and such. I'm a big. They have receivers now. I mean, Beckham still better than what they've had in the past, and Flowers is good when he catches the ball.
Okay, so if you're looking forward the next 8 weeks of the season, the final 8 games for most of these teams, and you're looking between Eagles, San Francisco, Chiefs, Bengals, Ravens, and you kind of have to hitch the wagon to one, so to speak. Out of those
Eagles. 5. I like the Eagles.
You're stuck on the Eagles. That's okay. No, I like
all these teams are good. All these teams are close. Injuries are going to play a role. I mean, look at San Francisco, for instance. San Francisco's a great team because they have 6 or 7 of the top 20 NFL players. Well, you lose a couple of those. I mean, they were out 2 of them, this week against the Bengals, and I mean, you're gonna be worse. That's not a team with depth.
There's massive issues behind it, especially up front on the O-line. You're starting to see kind of issues break through there for sure. Can I ask you, in terms of week 1 to now, which team has been bumped up the most in terms of rankings from your perspective?
up the. I mean, Jacksonville, Detroit are two teams that everybody had high, and I was like, I was a wait and see guy on them, and they both. I mean, especially Jacksonville. Jacksonville's playing some good football right now.
Okay, can I say who's fell off the most?
I mean, the Jets, was that fair? You know, I mean, obviously they lost their quarterback.
Yeah.
I thought the Giants would be reasonable. So they're, I mean, I think most did, or some did.
What a train wreck that has turned into.
I mean,
they're stuck now. I mean, Daniel Jones comes back, but where does this team go from here? I don't know. I mean, expectation-wise, couldn't have been higher coming in. I mean, win total still reflected kind of what it was a year ago, but I think so many people were way too high on that team for sure.
Yeah, they traded one of their few good defensive players, you know, now, and that's even if Thomas is back and healthy and Jones plays more like last year and less like this year. I mean, they have a running back problem as well. You know, I think there was I forget how often he was hurt, but they're obviously a better team with Barkley hurt. You know, when Barkley's in there, he wants to, you know, do 7 dances and hope he runs 300 yards for a touchdown every play, which obviously doesn't happen in the NFL.
You're saying they're better without Barkley?
Barkley's terrible, yeah.
Oh, okay, we got bold takes from Moscow versus Japan, and then we have Eagles #1, and now Barkley got out of the Giants. That's arguably, last week, those touches in that game condition, which was just a disaster, kind of kept him afloat with Davidow. But that's an interesting take. You'd be potentially higher on the Giants without Barkley.
I mean, not that I think it matters much. It's not like they have anybody else. In general, I think forcing touches to Barkley's bad. Like in late last season, when they were good, what were they good doing? They were good with 3-step drops, 5-step drops. Jones getting the ball out. There were RPOs in that system late last year. They were letting Daniel Jones be the playmaker almost every play. Remember the game against the Vikings? They were up and down the field, all Daniel Jones. I mean, counter trade to Saquon Barkley is just a 2-yard gain every time, and now it's 2nd and 8.
Interesting. Okay, that's bold. I like that, the boldness of that all the way around. I've got 2 more before we get into the book stuff. As it stands right now, most overrated team in the NFL.
I'm not that tuned into who's rated where, so that's more of a fan type year.
Okay, what's the team you see now that you envision dropping off that's maybe overperformed to this perspective?
As much as I like some of the Miami players and coaches, and now, I mean, Ramsey back is really big. They've been so bad at the line of scrimmage, and I wonder if enough teams have tried enough. I mean, the problem with defending Miami is you can't guard Tyreek and Waddle man to man, obviously, because they're who they are. I mean, they try to double Tyreek and ran past the 2 guys, and the timing between the coach and Tua is so good at reading the zone and hitting the spots in the zone. So it's like, what do you do? I mean, I think that the Patriots tried to play like a man cover 3 type approach with them.
Yeah.
Buffalo has. I mean, every team that has success is having success because they're simply rushing 4 or 5 guys and creating an immense amount of pressure. Usually while playing man. I don't think the zone is really going to work well, particularly it's going to get beat by the RPOs and such too. I feel like McDaniel better have some more stuff, or I think we're going to see a similar type fall from Miami.
Okay. On the inverse of that, who's the team that's too low that you can envision being much higher as we get to the end of the year?
I mean, Cleveland's a good football team. They don't have a quarterback. I mean, Watson's so bad. I think they're better off with PJ Walker of all people. At least he runs the play.
Wow.
If Cleveland had a quarterback, Cleveland would be very dangerous.
A PJ Walker endorsement. This is going directions I never envisioned at all.
PJ Walker endorsement. PJ Walker is not a good quarterback. PJ Walker is going to throw the first read, but he's going to throw the first read every time. He's not going to eat the ball. He's not going to eat the sack. If Stefanski designs a good play, Stefanski's this is really good offensive coaching they have. If they design a good play, Walker's going to run that play. The play will be there. It'll succeed. I mean, Deshaun Watson wants to make an 80-yard touchdown every play. So he's hold the ball. He takes more bad sacks than any quarterback I've ever seen. He's been really bad in the screen game. And everybody else on that team, especially the coaches, is great with the screen game. Walker's been able to throw the screens. I mean, look what the joke he's done the last couple of weeks. Now, of course, I mean, PJ Walker makes bad plays too. He's never going to go through progressions. He's never your 3rd and 5, and everyone's running a slant. I mean, they lost the game because he couldn't make that play against Seattle. So I'm not really saying, but if they had a quarterback, they'd be a really. I mean, they're so good on both defensive line. I mean, Myles Garrett. I mean, guess he's the best player. Few good edge rushers this year, but Myles Garrett's been a game wrecker.
Okay, so just to bring this all together, you think Eagles are number 1. You're very high by the sounds of it on Cincinnati. You think the Browns are a team that can improve and progress as the season goes on for their rankings. And then on the other side, you thought Lamar was MVP coming into the season. You're still big on the Ravens, and you think the Dolphins are a team that can fall off as the season goes. That's a good summary?
I think it's a good summary, yeah.
Okay, can I throw a couple teams of rapid fire at you with their current market rating, and you just say higher or lower as the end of the year goes? Saints right now are 14th. Too high, too low?
Man,
it could be just
I
right.
haven't seen the Saints. I'd be just making up bullshit. Okay, I really don't know about the Saints.
Atlanta at 13.
Man, I'll tell you what about Atlanta. There's another team. If they played Heineke, I think Atlanta's 13. With
13.
Desmond Ritter quarterback, it feels a little high. I don't think does anybody really have them 13 or.
Seeing that just market rating wise, they are half a point.
It doesn't make any sense. I guess the Saints don't make any sense before. I mean, I think I just named 14 teams that are would be 7 points versus either of those teams, right?
Yeah.
I feel like I like half the teams, and I mean, who the heck are the Falcons and the Saints?
LA Rams right now 23rd.
I mean, the Rams are a team that are going to have a lot of success as long as they can pass protect and Stafford's healthy. So that means if you put him up against a team without a pass rush, and if I don't know if he's got the UCL injury now, I mean, he's always hurt. But Stafford's so good when he's good. They basically have Cooper Kupp and Cooper Kupp Jr. now. It's funny because they traded Goff because Goff couldn't really make a play if under pressure, right? And now they have Stafford, who really isn't that different. He's better than Goff under pressure, but he's really not that different. They have to be able to pass protect, and in general, they don't have the bodies, so that they're when they run into the teams with the good edge rushers, I think they're just in trouble.
Last one, Chargers at 11. Too high, too low?
So much upside. I mean, I'm not as big high on Herbert as most, but I love Kellen Moore. Obviously, they have an offensive line this year. Keenan Allen actually, have some weapons. Their defense underperforms every single year. I mean, they have theoretically some talent there. So I'm really starting to wonder about the coaching. And then you have Staley's nice. He goes for the 4th and 1s, but then they turn the 4th and 1 into 4th and 5 and wonder why they never get it. I mean, they ran a fullback trap to should have lost the game versus the Vikings on 4th and a foot. I mean, the heck is that?
Okay. Very good. This is a good overview and outlook. I really like that Eagles call at 1. I think that's really interesting. Some of the other let's see what Cleveland manages to do at QB. I think that's the one I might disagree with the most. But
they have to bring Watson back. I mean, they paid him $230 million, half the draft choices. They have to play him when he's healthy. What are they going to do? They're going to be what they'll be.
It's just so worrisome to see you have this defensive effort week after week after week, and if there's zero offensive support, when does that defensive effort start to taper off? You have to somehow match that up with something on the other side to keep it going.
I guess. I mean, I get that narrative, and maybe I don't know enough about what it means to be an NFL player or an NFL team, but I do tend to wonder. And then you get stuff like the teams. Sometimes they blame one side or the other. I mean, the Jets defense against the Eagles, for instance. Remember that game? It was raining. Hurts threw to him the Eagles smoked them, right? The Eagles were going up and down the field. They just kept having lucky turnovers, kept stopping them. And then there was this narrative I read after the game about, the Jets defense are wondering when the offense will step up. Meanwhile, in that game, the offense was okay for the Jets, and the defense was terrible. They just shit out like a champ. But that's sports. That's life, right?
Yep, absolutely. Okay. Interesting takes there to consider. Well, I'm going to record this. I'm going to clip it. And then we're going to post it in 7 weeks, and we're going to see how it plays out with that Eagles take at 1 and how that ends up going. But I think a lot of people see some value in that. Let's get to this. The new book. I got it. Interception is now available on Amazon. Would you call it the sequel to the Logic of Sports Betting, or how are you classifying this? Is it a sequel? Is it a follow-up? Is it a standalone?
in my mind, the only things that are similar are the writing style and the cover. And, both things are, especially the cover part, just because we were, we're not professional publishers. We just wanted to write a book.
Okay. So I've got a couple questions because this book, Interception, resonated with me more than the logic of sports betting. I think the logic of sports betting came out at a time, I believe it was 2019. Everything was fresh. There were all these kind of undiscovered ideas or thoughts that you guys kind of aggregated all together in one place that everybody fell in love with. The book is incredibly highly reviewed. You now have Interception that comes at a time where I think a lot of bettors are at different stages within kind of their betting expertise level. You've had people that have gone through all of these books, been limited, been cut off, been turned away. You have all these people now learning through all these other products, trying to figure out where they go. Where do you think that this book falls timing wise? Is it too late? Is it too early? Like, who is this really for?
Me, Ed. It was for us. So the first book, we had a plan. We had a business plan. The book was very much meant to work on the foundation of our business. We put a ton of work into it. There was like many different kind of versions of the first book, and I felt like, well, I was gonna say we get lucky, but it's when Ed's in charge of any project, it's not really luck. It's Ed comes up with, in my mind, perfection. The logic of sports betting, so much work we put in. We did this, we did that. We have this outline, we have that outline. And in my mind, I really wasn't sure how it was going to end up coming together. Each of the sections, we worked on, they were heavily edited back and forth, and it was like unclear until the end, like exactly how the book was going to work, like from a start to finish, like a whole picture versus just these little snippets. And then it was funny. I remember I read like the whole book cover to cover, like the finished version, for the first time on an airplane in New York, to one of the first conferences that I went to. And I was like, wow, this book is really good. Like, I didn't expect it to be like going, wow, and then again, that's just, basically credit to Ed. So the book was what we were going for. It was, in my mind, a beginner's book. My dad, for instance, was happy to give it to all his friends, and it was understandable. I think it was really designed to get people into the industry, into betting, thinking about it in a different way. If there was one statement that people used to make and don't make any more, that I think that maybe the book played a role in, or when people say Vegas knows, or what did Vegas make that line? And now I see so often, even like people that would have said that 5-6 years ago, now writing, having an understanding that, Oscar Goodman's not making an NFL line. It's not there's no conspiracy here. It's just a number. People are making bets. The market's moving. And I like to think our book played a large role in that. And I think that's, huge moving forward. Going toward Interception, this book, we wrote it for us. Ed suggested we had some time this summer, and Ed said, I want to write another book. And I was never going to be against it. I was like, we have another book. So he wrote the whole basically the first half, right? And I read, wow, this is so good. And then because that was so good, it spurred a bunch of creativity in me. And so the first book, I outlined stuff. There was lots of my ideas in the first book, but I probably wrote 3 words. I actually wrote some words in this book, so I'm a little proud of that too. I obviously edited everything, but I wrote some sections, and I was pretty inspired by what Ed had done. It was the right thing at the right time. Actually, you mentioned Japan earlier. I wrote a bunch of it jet lagged in Japan.
Interesting.
Waking up, too early the first few days, and sitting in the park with my son and just writing it.
Okay, so I'm going to press on this creativity, because in my opinion, you wrote a chunk of this that I haven't seen really spoken about anywhere else, because everywhere on Twitter and forums going back years, it was all about creating the model, finding something that nobody else had, building out, scraping, pulling in odds. And this book advocates for the value of game watching and the importance of specializing in a sport. Explain why you took that stance, especially given your background.
If you're a reader of the book, I mean, you can win like this, right? So my friend, for instance, my neighbor, and he loves to bet. He makes small bets. He's not he loves the gamification of the betting, right? Which is what this book is for. And he can read the book, or not read the book. I mean, watch the game. If he knows what to look for, the soft spots of the sports books, he can beat it with this. He's not going to make a model. He's got a full-time job in kids. I love making models, but I mean, it takes all the time. And anymore, markets are very, very, very sharp. You want to try to like beat a market with modeling? I think that'd be very difficult. However, anybody can watch a game and pick off some of this, edge cases, and so there's a lot of product with these books, the sports books, and there's only some of it is price discovered. You're only fighting the actual models, the actual large bettors on some of it. A lot of it is just it's product to have fun with, and because it's product they can have fun with, it's imminently beatable. So the goal with the book was to show how to beat it. The second part of the book, the part that was like, honestly, it made a little bit of a challenge to us because it's not like something we'd ever really done, right? We worked on the other side. We weren't actually like a lot of this stuff I had to like do. I really had to like dive in and see, okay, is this beatable? How do you beat this? Because I wasn't actually beating this stuff like this, and the last thing I was ever going to do was write something that I wasn't sure was right.
Okay, so if you're kind of go a bit further on this, if you're somebody who says, let's say you hire me tomorrow in a hypothetical situation, and you're putting me to the task of watching games all day, that's all I have to do. Mm-hmm. What do you tell me to watch, and how do I get better at watching it to actually find something that I can use to bet? Where would you tell me to go?
So the number one, look for the games that are either blowouts or is the underdog winning. Why is the underdog winning? And then from like, did somebody get hurt, or are they getting lucky? And then look for like some of the off stuff, like is a book putting up player props, and the running back on the team that was supposed to be winning is now losing the game. Maybe they're going to stop running. That's the kind of stuff that is just not going to get well modeled by the sports books. And you're if you're a team that's down that has to pass or is going to pass more, you probably went with a running game plan. Well, bet the running back under rushing yards. Another prop spot that's probably everywhere. That is, a lot of teams have first and second down backs and third down backs, right? Well, figure out what part of the game it is. Is it if the third down back, right, has props up, and they're like game props, they're probably being time decayed, right? Time decayed means like, so they start with like, let's say there's a third down back and he has a rushing receiving total of 29 yards. I'm making shit up, right?
Yeah.
So probably most of these models are simply going to say, okay, there's 60 minutes to start the game. So therefore, half the game, okay, now he's got 14 yards, maybe some medium, but like that general take, right? Well, when is a third down back going to put up all of his numbers? 2-minute drills, actual third downs, late drives, right? So now the team's getting the ball, say, and it's 2.5 minutes left, and let's assume they're a good team trying to pick off a team that actually is a third down back. I don't know if these prop players. I'm not really a fantasy guy.
Let's
the Chiefs. The Chiefs could be a good one, right? Because they use McKinnon, but not much, right? And they're really good. So now you've got to let's say McKinnon started out, I don't know, 30 yards, whatever. Well, now the Chiefs are about to receive the ball at their own 25-yard line with 2 minutes left. Mahomes is taking them down the field. They're in their 2-minute drill. McKinnon is getting these snaps. These are going to be all of McKinnon's big snaps, right? So if the book has half the total up because half the game's gone on McKinnon, and all of a sudden you're getting 14 from here, he might do 14 on this drive. That's the shit you can get from watching the game. And the books are going to not be able to put up a good number because they're putting up 1,000 lines at once. You need like a trader to realize that. Say, oh wait, yeah, McKinnon, he's going to be higher right there because he's the third down back. You got to have people that know that. And it's not doable.
Okay, so this is where I think people might be watching and they have like a bit of disagreement, because what you just said to me really resonates with me, because that's how I tend to watch sports. That's what I'm looking for. It makes sense to me. But it might make some sense to somebody else watching this right now. But then they're going to say, how can I, on my couch, watching this and knowing this, have something of value that these sports books with all this investment in tech and money, like how can sports books not figure this out too? This seems pretty straightforward. Like how can someone believe that this is doable and the sports books can't get this right?
Because they have to make, they've got 1,000 lines up. It's and football in particular is a really, really hard sport to model. Like comparing football, like people are always like, why is football harder to model than soccer? And people have different theories. I heard a really good one from one of the sharpest the people in the industry the other day that said that it's because the people that modeled soccer grew up watching soccer, and the people currently modeling American football grew up watching soccer. And there's certainly some truth to that. But I think much more than that is and this is coming from someone who really doesn't know soccer. To me, there's just not that many different situations in soccer. It doesn't matter that much whether the ball's in control at the midfield, in their own end. There's only so many score situations. There's only so many time situations. Not only that, and I think even more than that, each situation goes on for a longer amount of time, right? So, like, for instance, American football, it's 4th and 2 at the other team's 20. The team's lined up to go for it, but then they call timeout, right? So here you have it. There's lines up here, right? Places are putting lines up in this situation. Will they go for it? Will they kick? Heck, even if you know what they're going to do, that is a tough spot to model. Different teams have different chances of getting the 4th and 2. Different. All of a sudden, this field goal matters more. Who's kicking it? Is it Moody? Is it Tucker? All of this stuff matters. And now the line's going to be up for a minute. There's no chance for price discovery, right? So there's no time. And price discovery is about more than just making the line correct right now. Think about if you're modeling the game, right? If you're modeling soccer, well, you can look at the bet data and the market data for a period of time, right? If you look at the market data, say, I hear this in the industry, but the football too, they're like, well, the market said this. Market, there's no market there. There was no time for a market. Somebody threw a dart who had an opinion, and then there was only like 1 minute to bet, right? And then, so versus the soccer game where, again, for the most part, you're talking about 10, 20, sometimes 30 real-time minutes, basically the same situation. It's scoreless in the first half. It's still scoreless in the first half. Oh, it's still scoreless in the first half. And all this while, if somebody, let's say a really good bettor, realizes something interesting in this game, they've got time to make that bet. Then it gets into the market, right? All of a sudden, that market's price discovery, and that's a pretty sharp, hard to beat market. Way different than the line that's up for 60 seconds when it's 4th and 2 at the 20. And to me, that's the major difference.
Okay. So Adam Orphan is someone who watches all of these live streams, has been following the podcast for a long time too. Let's say that he's at home in Arizona. He's watching the football games on Sunday. He's up early in the morning. He's watching Chiefs Dolphins. The exact same scenario you just outlined comes up. He pulls up his sportsbook app. He's looking in play, and he sees McKinnon at 14.5 receiving yards. If the sportsbooks that have all this money in tech don't know how to make that number well, how can he know what that number should be? How do you get confidence in just assuming it's not right if he has no chance of making that number right himself?
I mean, I think that some of the, if your goal is to make money versus sportsbook on a Sunday morning, you're not on your couch watching one game and then you're going to pull up your sportsbook at the 2-minute mark. You need to be somewhat prepared. You need to have an idea of what the lines are, what lines are going to be up. Maybe make a list of 20 things to look for during the game, 20 different spots during the game or two games. Have a few games on. Particularly anymore where, people finally figured out to have more than one monitor. You have a few games on. Have a few sports books open. Be ready, be vigilant, make it. If you want to win, you're still going to have to like actually try to win versus having a beer and rooting for your team, which is obviously nothing wrong with that. But it's going to be harder to win if you're not putting any time or effort into looking for the lines, shopping the lines, as we've talked about, extensively, et cetera.
So would you advise on like taking an aggregate number from multiple books to see if there's like variance within that, or like where would Adam go in that situation to figure out like, okay, I really like this angle with McKinnon, but like, how do I know if this in play number is off at all?
So for sure, you'd want to know what the pregame expectation was, a pregame number. I don't know about Raz. I was about to mention ETR. He established a run, has like good, like where you can have projections, right? So you have projections, decent idea what the props are. I know Raz is obviously perfect for what they do, but I don't think they do this. That's why I'm mentioning ETR here.
Sure, of course, for the projections. Yeah.
Anybody that has good projections, right? Do a little bit of homework on it, right? Be kind of ready. Like, okay, here's the projection, and then just think about it. If they're supposed to have 30 or whatever for the game, and now they're about to get like all of their touches halfway through the game, you have half the number, bet it. If the sportsbooks figured this out for whatever reason and now it's 24 and a half up, don't bet it. But you definitely have to have an idea to start with of what these odds are, what the lines are, what the general expectations are, or you're not going to be able to like pick off that spot for sure.
Okay.
It's not that easy. Right?
Let me keep prying here. So this shows up on my door last Tuesday or Wednesday. I read it over the next couple days in coffee in the morning, going through it. I would say last Tuesday at this time, my impression about same game parlays was these are bad bets. There's way too much hold. These are for suckers. This is something that I should stay away from. Anybody who's doing media about them is just leading people to the slaughter, so to speak. I finished the book. I have a very different impression of it. And I think within the book, there was advocation that these can be good bets, essentially because it's a math problem that's very difficult to solve from the sportsbook sides.
Mm-hmm.
Is that impression that I took that there's actually can be value found with it? Is that the point you were trying to get across?
For sure. All of this stuff is very hard. That's like you've said a couple of times, and I agree with the sports books with the money, and we mentioned this a couple of times in the book too, where a sports book is a business, not a gambler, right? So the sports book goal is not to hold the biggest percentage. The sports book's goal is not to actually have even the biggest revenue. I'm not saying those things are bad, but if you're a lot of these sports books are public companies. What's the public company's goal? To increase their price, shareholder value. That's the goal from the top down. It's not how do I make more money from the sharps on Sunday afternoon. So you've got a limited amount of overall budget, right? Limited amount of real talent, whether that's modeling talent, marketing talent, managing talent. And you're the CEO of a large corporation that has many different things that play into your bottom line and at the end of the day, your shareholder value. And I think us being interested in the nuts and bolts and the odds, it gets lost to us and probably a lot of listeners that if you're a large corporation who, again, is going, how sharp the line is just not as important as it is to us. So all of this time and money that the sports books have, and they do have, are not necessarily going into making the McKinnon live prop the very best. You don't need to make the McKinnon live prop. It just doesn't move the needle. And the cost of some of this modeling is, enormous, particularly when what you only have so many modelers, right? You only have so much engineering. You might want to make a different Belarus. You might want to build a new model for a new sport, offer more product. More product drives more customers and sharper product, particularly when there aren't, that many. We didn't write this book for any particular reason, as I've mentioned, but I do think one of the fallouts from this book is that, unfortunately, and this is again not our goal. I actually had a good friend of mine in the industry say this is going to make their job harder. Like he's a trading vice president at a large sports book, and he said this is going to make our job a lot harder. And honestly, I didn't really think of that, but Yeah, it will. More people will be looking for the stuff that they weren't looking for before. More people who were clicking in a random same game parlay. I mean, that's, assuming people find and read the book, which you never know. But
Okay, so that's where I want to press a little bit further too, because I think it's interesting how it was laid out within the book, where you were sort of writing from a perspective that if you're doing the work to come up with this, like how many different levels away from what you were thinking could you go to potentially find some value? And the example in the book was if a quarterback is throwing interceptions, rather than betting passing yards under, for instance, you may want to consider something like field goal successfully made under for the team, because if interceptions are being thrown, that team probably isn't kicking field goals.
right.
How would you advise? Let's put Adam Orphan on the spot again. He's at home at Arizona. He's getting ready for the week of games. And you're sort of encouraging this mindset to where you're thinking multiple levels away from that angle. Where do you even start with that?
Play with it. Get on. I mean, one of the same game parlays are an awesome product across the board. It's so cool to be able to go on the sports book and click on 2 things, 3 things, 8 things, and watch the odds change in real time. That's a really, really hard computer science engineering problem. The fact that this is, yes, what are the sports books putting the money into that? That is a hard problem. And these things are tight. I'm talking about the usability. The same game parlay products is tight. Like it's a fun product to play with. That's where the money's going, to make the products fun. And then obviously they're going to do the best they can at coming up with a way to make the odds parts hard. And if you've got 2 sports books and one of them has the best same game parlay odds, but it's an unusable product or hard to use, not fun to use product, and the other one has odds that are beatable, but hey, that product is fun, which one is the better business, right? By far, the better business is the better product, and that's why the odds are weak, right? Because the money's not correct. The industry is correct not to make the odds as sharp as possible. That's not where to put the resources. Put the resources to make the product better. So coming back around here, get in there and play with it. Put 2 things on there. If you have any kind of database or want to mess with that stuff, do it. But honestly, I couldn't actually tell you from a data perspective most of those examples of the book. They're all simply my intuition, right? Like the interceptions, the field goals. A big one in my mind is Team A rushing yards versus Team B interceptions. The interceptions one that I was like, oh, this is a good one, right? Because what causes interceptions? When you have to anymore, quarterbacks are usually smart enough to where they're more likely to take a chance when it's right to take a chance. So when you throw the most interceptions, when you're trying to come back in the game, right? So what has to happen to be coming back in the game, right? Well, the other team's probably winning. Not only is the other team winning, but if the other team is winning while you're throwing your interceptions, what kind of play is the other team calling when they do have the ball? So first and second down, running back over toward other teams' interceptions over. It's clearly correlated, and a lot of these products are painted as if it's not over. I've seen where it's literally anti-correlated, which is even more nuts because the interceptions is also going to limit the plays from the team throwing the interceptions, and the other team will have more plays to rack up more rushing yards.
Same question as the prop stuff. How do you know when you have something good? What are you looking for? Because all of these prices for most people, I was playing around with one last night for the Monday Night Football game, and the price that came out was 6-1 on 3 options that I put in. And it was, again, field goal, interceptions, some backup running back, receiving yards, and the chase mode, like you mentioned. And I'm putting that through, and I'm like, 6-1 seems okay, but like, how do you know if that's good or bad?
There's no answer. I mean, the one thing you can always do is just put 2 things on and look at that price, right? Well, you don't have to there's no rule that says once you've got 3 things on, you're like, I wanted this. Well, just take 2 of them off to measure what they're giving you on. Like, if you put the time into, you can measure each one, right? You can measure. You can look. Just put 2 of the legs onto the bet slip, and it'll tell you the price, and then just do the math for the correlation there, depending on what the individual prices are. Another super overlooked thing with the same game parlays is a lot of times the pricing is simply weak. right? What I mean, like the actual prop pricing, because there's so many options and they're not price discovered, sometimes the prop pricing is simply weak. So you can, if I had one goal and it was how do I make the most money on same game parlays, the first thing I would actually do is find the weak prop prices and then just figure out how to get more down on them. Like some of this, sometimes they have like alternate passing, there's like 8 or 9 choices for a quarterback, say. I'm sure some of those numbers are bad. So if you found the ones that were bad somehow, like by actually doing the work to make a good distribution curve of the passing yards, you could probably find a couple of those. And then even if you're losing some of the correlations, that one price is so good, and the sportsbooks never really notice it because they're just getting hit with so many of these. And they'll notice when you start winning their money, and that's why people are like, well, wait a second, I'm playing this, that, but I'm winning and they limited me. Well, think about it from the sportsbook's point of view, right? It can be hard to figure out who's winning. You've got thousands of lines up, and then you only get a couple of people that really get to judge it. The easiest way to judge it a lot of times is to say, well, who's taking my money? Well, let's stop that.
Okay, this is really good to think about. I think it'll get people in a much different mindset, because for me, it really, really switched it. And the other big thing that I took away from the book was I think over the last couple of years, especially working with the guys at RAS, I've kind of thought differently about like how betting really works at the high level. But maybe what other people tend to miss, and I'm putting myself in kind of just like an average bettor shoes, or myself 10 years ago, when I went to make a bet, 2015, for instance, I felt like I was betting against like a specific guy on the other side of the sports book. Like it was me versus that guy. I've learned that it's now very much at the highest level, bettors versus bettors, to race to get the price to get down and be able to sort of spread it out and get as much as you want down. But you kind of painted this picture within the book that it is now turning into, for like the average bettor, it's bettor versus these massive models. And you're trying to find issues within the models to where it's potentially weakest.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many different options that is it right to say that bettor versus bettor element is kind of being isolated to more like full game sides and totals, but now you open up this whole other world and it's mostly these average bettors versus the models themselves?
So back to price discovery, right? What is price discovery? Price discovery means there's a market for anything, right? In this case, we're talking about, say full game side, because it's something that's out there. And now if a bettor bets something, the line's going to move. And the other bettor bets another thing, the line's going to move. That's a situation where at the end of the day, it's in some way, bettor versus bettor, right? Now we're talking about a same game parlay. A same game parlay in no way is price discovered, right? I mean, it's whatever the model spits out, they tack on a big hold. You play into it and you hope there's no, like, if I go and I make a same game parlay bet right now, they're not going to move the line. None of it. It could be, I could call them on the phone and say, hey, this is Matt Davidow. I just spent 3 hours and this is the absolute best same game parlay bet I can make on this game tonight. And the guy on the other end would be like, wow, you really got us good on that one. That's, yeah, wow, I can't believe that's there. And you know what they're going to do next? Nothing. There's nothing they can do. It's a giant model. You can't move the line. What are they going to move? There's so many different correlation factors, and all this stuff is most of it's hard coded. There's not even a way to move it, right? You're going to move the line. They're either going to hope somebody does play it, or if other people play the same thing, well, they'll flag their accounts and try to make it harder for them to play going forward if they're an overall and undesirable customer.
It's changing. Is this only going to sort of become more and more common? Like, are we going to get to a point 5 years from now where like these new products are just going to dominate, and the idea of betting just full game sides and totals for most people is going to become less and less? Like, where does this end up stopping, if it does at all?
I like to think of it all as growth. And now certainly there's players that used to bet $100 on the Cowboys, at the same $100 is going into the same game parlay product, right? I mean, that's happening no matter what. But I think for the most part, it's just there's going to be a growth factor. So the panel bet batch I was asked about, like, what will happen with them. I mean, they call it the Circa model, but they just basically mean a sportsbook model that's looking for liquidity liquidity volume in exchange for a lower hold, right? And like, will that get there? And think it will. Why? Because there's room for all of it. I don't think the fact that the same game parlay products and similar are propagating left, right, and sideways is really taking away from the full game action, particularly the level of full game action that you're talking about with Raz and stuff at the highest levels. I think that it's a raising higher water raises all boat situations. When people ask, well, why like aren't you hurting yourself in some way in the future, whatever way books? And I was like, no, it's the same as poker. I was like, books are great. Like, I want to keep getting better. I want to keep going to the highest levels. Well, I better teach some other people how to get up and compete with me, or I'm just going to be playing by myself, right? And I think the sports is the same way. The more the more people know, the more people are trying to better a lot of this stuff gets, the more there's going to be in the more at some point of more price discovery, more liquidity across the board that we're gonna get. And I love the fact. I love the fact personally, from an ego perspective, that Ed and I think have played a fairly large role with the books and trying to elevate that overall. Another way to look at this, particularly with a lot of audiences thinking, well, what about getting limited, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Well,
yes,
I actually kind of think that, like, by writing books like this, by getting this stuff out there, this will, in the long run, I don't want to say force, because not only forces, but motivate the sports books, motivate the industry to simply be better, to better prices, more to be less likely to think that the right answer is, oh, let's limit it, but instead we better make it better, because otherwise we're going to eliminate a bunch of customers. If you look at look at it from a sportsbook's perspective, right? If there's, and this is it's funny, there's a 2-star review on Amazon that was like one of the most positive reviews ever. The guy didn't like the book because it was like,
I saw that.
I was like, oh wait, this is too good. 2 stars. I'm like, oh, this is. But I think that when you only have to limit, say, 100 people, and then you're just done, right? It's so easy. But let's just say that everybody, let's say there was the 500 turns into a different order of magnitude to 5,000 people that are now really need limited to make a product work. At some point, that motivates the sportsbook to simply make the product a little bit better and to find alternatives toward limiting the players. So I think it kind of works in reverse. It won't get more people limited to show this to the sports books. It'll, in the long run, make less people limited, because the sports books are going to need and want to offer more product to a wider audience.
Can there be an argument made from the bettor side that if there wasn't this active sort of widespread limiting, there wouldn't be as many good bets to be had as product is sort of evolving and being discovered? For
sure. I mean, I don't know. I've said that on the internet before. I always get, it's like a careful what you wish for type thing, right? If you're in it, if you can't limit, well, what are you going to do? You're going to stop putting up the stuff that's beatable. You only have 2 choices, right? You can either put up beatable stuff and limit, or if you're not going to limit, I mean, you see this a lot on the internet. Circa, where's your product? Why don't you have more product? And there's, I'm sure, lots of reasons for that. I'm not trying to, I shouldn't even mention Circa in particular, but I know it's such a staple brand for what I think a lot of these bettors want. And and this is from a deck prism perspective, we were faced with the same things. Like, why don't you have more product? Well, our client says you can't lose on your product. Well, therefore, I can only deliver product that I can say that I can let Adam turn off bet and let Raz bet and not beat me. I'm going to keep working to make more of that product, but I'm not going to offer something else that's beatable, because the sportsbook is saying we don't limit. Therefore, if you put this up, oh well. And some stuff that I've seen, like even from what we had up, back, from the deck prism side, and we'd have it up, and someone would take advantage of it, and well, there's nothing we could do. All that happened was we lost the money, right? So, well, better not put that up anymore was always the answer. It was never, because you had 2 choices, right? You can limit the player that's just taking your money, is going to keep doing it, or you can stop putting up the product that is beatable, right? Those are really your 2 options. So if you lose the limiting option, you stop putting up the product. So anyone who's, like, particularly the people that I think mostly are getting limited, they're getting limited because they're first getting to play in a product that wouldn't be there if they weren't able to be limited.
I think that's a terrific point that sometimes gets omitted from the discussions and just kind of the one-way bashing. So that's good perspective from your side. We've kept you for almost an hour. I appreciate your time very much. The book is Interception. It's up on Amazon. The NFL team to look at is the Eagles, adamantly. You're putting that in pen, in permanent marker for the rest of the season as the #1 team. And here we go. Look at this. Matthew is my hero for saying Barkley is bad out loud. I'm a Giants fan and felt on an island with that take for the last few years. There's agreement with you that Barkley needs to go away from that team. So you've bridged a lot of things here with a lot of takes. Didn't see any advocacy for Moscow food being better than Japan, but there was a lot of support for your comments here so far.
By the book. Ed and I are proud of this book. This is a better book than the first one. This is if you're watching this show, go read that book. That's for sure.
I agree with that, but I don't know if it's going to be reflected within the reviews for it because of the timing. But I completely agree with the content.
The reviews might be worth it, but again, I was sweating the first reviews. The first reviews were okay. This is the book was supposed to be. Again. This one, who cares? I know this book is great. That's good enough for me.
Yep, it absolutely is. Appreciate your time very much. Thanks for sparing an hour with us, sharing those thoughts. I think a lot of people have a lot of things to work with coming from this video, from the NFL side or from the book side. Hopefully we can circle back just before the playoffs and look at everything going into January once these teams settle up.
Anytime, Adam. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you.